I'm Shermeen Yousil. I'm an assistant professor at Florida Atlantic University School of Architecture. And uh, I'm presenting this paper in collaboration with Professor Daniel Bolojan, who's here with us. And we're both working on artificial intelligence. I have also the intersection of working on AI and performance-driven design. And I'm directing the Environmental Design and Natural Materials Lab, a newly established lab at the school. And Daniel Bolojan is directing the AI, Creative AI Lab at the school. So I'm gonna start with the title of our paper. So the paper is titled Interconnectivity of Deep Learning Models in AI-Driven Design Systems. And the work basically we're presenting here examines a new human AI collaborative workflow, combining machine and designer creativity in a comprehensive framework. We developed this framework which involves a set of interconnected deep neural networks. And we aim for increasing flexibility of this AI-assisted, AI-driven design system by building this logical continuity in design decisions while also augmenting designers' agency. So we have this agenda for the presentation for the paper, and we aim that we take you through the introduction and how we actually develop this research based on prior work that we have been investigating for years right now. And also we relate to our background and related work, including our work. And then we take you to the methods and the case studies that we developed, and finally to discussions and conclusions. So for the coming slides, I will ask my co-author Daniel to present.
Yeah, thank you, Shermeen. Can you go next slide? So despite their promising application on informing design processes, there are still several problems when it comes to application of deep learning models in architectural design. And one of these challenges with this kind of AI models is that they are domain-specific systems. And when they are used in architectural design as discrete systems, they to address in a way multiple architecture systems or tasks, they really tend to flatten relationships between architectural systems. And for us, this is quite problematic because we understand that the outcome of architecture process is codependent on multiple interrelated systems. And we want, in the end, AI models to be aware of the variety of correlationships between different architectural systems. So one of these problems is the oversimplification of the design problem when we are using AI applications. And recent literature that we can see like coming out, it's quite experimental, and it's often deploying this kind of discrete in a way approach where you have one single AI model that tries to tackle multiple types of architectural systems and also design activities. But the way that we understand design is very well described by Giro, where design is considered to be one of the most complex human activities. It's a sort of multimodal kind of endeavor. So another important issue identified in this research is this need to investigate the functioning AI-driven workflow structure with design intentions encoded and incorporated within a human supervised process. So importantly, how certain levels of agency can be identified and made explicit in interacting with learning systems. In this case, we are talking mostly about generative deep learning systems. So to address these questions or these problems, one research objective is to address questions such as how do we employ multiple AI models to tackle multiple design aspects and phases within the design process. In developing this new design workflow, we adopt this approach of system theory and the need to break down the design process into constituent components. So there is a need for multiple connected AI models to address the smaller broken down design task. And this idea of a hybrid process, it's also something described by Gary Kasparov in one of his books, where he's describing that a weak human player plus a machine plus a better process is superior to a strong computer alone. And more remarkably, it's superior to a strong human plus machine plus inferior process. So therefore, this work focuses on developing a design system, a prototype defined by interconnected AI models and agent-based systems to address multiple architectural systems and scales, or different systems that are addressed at different design level, design tasks, design phases, while providing, in a way, the designer with a variety of degrees of agency. So another question that we are asking here, or another objective, is how do we address or augment design agency and allow designers' intentions to be encoded in the process? When we are working with this kind of AI model, design intentions can be encoded either through the curation of the data set, through the network types that we are working with, or through other types of the network filters, the type of combination strategies that we establish. So also, if we combine these kind of networks with other systems, such as agent-based systems, the intention can also be encoded at the level of behavior. So this is something that actually can help. Yeah. So in the past, we already, so this paper is part of a broader, in a way, research that we are engaging in here at Florida Atlantic. And one of most of these networks that we are operating with, they are either GAN networks or language-based networks. Others are classifier, autoencoders, and so on. Yeah. So these are probably, for those of you that are not familiar, these are types of neural networks that are based on an adversarial learning process, where you have two competing networks that have two competing goals. But we know that design is not necessarily just that. Yeah, design, you have competing goals, but at the same time, also you have cooperative, in a way, goals. Yeah. Next slide, please. So one example that inspired us was, although it's not an architectural example, is the AlphaGo by DeepMind that beat the world champion at Go. And this represents a sort of precedent for this kind of idea of expanded search space with different types of exploration and intuitive decision making. This is very typical to certain learning models. Can we go next? So like I mentioned before, this is a continuation of an ongoing research project that we are investigating to develop a new design workflow where you have a variety of multimodal AI models that are integrated and interconnected. So here you see another example of this, where rather than just using image-based models, we start to interconnect image model with language models and other type of modalities, because in the end we understand that design is not just an optimization towards a goal. Design is a sort of negotiation between multiple competing, in a way, tasks and tasks. So therefore, that's why we are looking at different kind of networks, and we are critical about where exactly you deploy which kind of network and how those networks are going to interact with each other.
Thank you, Daniel. And from this slide, I'm going to move forward. I just wanted to mention the previous background slides were also published papers that we published recently in the Cadrea conference. Now, for us, moving forward, so we have actually offered multiple workshops to apply this developed interconnected system and so we offered an Acadia workshop, 2 workshops at the Digital Futures, and in this particular application, we actually carried the project for a thesis studio, a graduate studio at our school. And we developed a framework so that it involves the set of interconnected models, deep learning models. And then how do we create a system so that it's flexible for each student or groups so that they can apply those interconnected models into certain design phases and design tasks. And there are multiple tasks, in this case, exploration, design generation, and design development. And students actually involved with training 30, 40, or 50 deep learning models. Now, we also wanted to now identify strategies of these deep learning model connections. So for us, this interconnectivity of DL models can be examined and identified through different types of strategies of connections. For example, there's a sequential strategy where the connected AI models follow a logical sequence with the result of one AI model's output feeding into the input of the next model. In a parallel strategy, two sets of interconnected AI models are linear and parallel, but do not converge necessarily. The parallel process allows for this direct influence from one model to another and can represent this parallel design exploration. Another important strategy here is branching, which is the design problem is broken down into subtasks defined by separate sets of AI models, and then they branch off and or they can converge. When they branch off, there are subtasks that are combined and then later merged and converge into a design solution. So this enables addressing and disentangling specific design tasks into subtasks and address them individually. So with our case studies, we have identified one bigger strategy, which is the parallel strategy. So this is one of the students' workflows, and it's a very complex workflow. So for us, we converted into a simpler diagram. And for this simpler diagram, you can see that we identified that there are multiple strategies of branching and parallel, and but the main bigger strategy is actually a parallel strategy. And we identified benefits and advantages to this type of strategy. So the design workflow for that group was broken down into these parallel approaches, simultaneous design exploration using multiple style GAN and cycle GAN model trainings, and generating synthetic patterns and systems, and basically running one after another, one model training after another. And then the outputs of the first two or three models were feeding into another cycle of trainings where we have multiple, again, cycle GAN models in this case. And then this branching was also embedded in the workflow. Now, the process continued. So there is multiple trainings, multiple AI models connected, and then they also used additional behaviors and systems, including stigmergy behavior, cellular automata, and other agent-based systems. But then they actually, the whole process was leading afterwards to another set of trainings, and in this case also self-organizing map, and they also engaged with 3D GAN models, and in the end they developed these multiple systems that we can see here in the lower part. Now they converted and post-rationalized their images and AI-generated designs into 3D objects, and we can see here some speculative design approaches and proposals coming from that particular system. So we can see that the groups also actually engage in a parallel approach to examine mycelium structure and mycelium growth into the AI experiments and into also physical experiments, and both experiments converge and merge into this type of design production. In the next case study, we actually had identified another strategy that is more dominant, which is branching strategy. So if you look at this workflow from the students, you can see that the main approach here is actually the fact that they were running parallel, but also branching. So each model is actually branching into multiple other models training. Now we can see that they also developed agent-based systems and modeling as initial data set curation methods to create data sets for the deep learning models. And then they were breeding those models with natural systems and natural behavior. And in an attempt to actually address natural inspiration versus stigmergy related or agent-based related patterns and systems. Now we can see here the data set were later also contextualized, and they were refined and parameterized so that we have context related and we have more project level related data and images. Now, they also engage in multiple trainings. And in this case, this is one of the example of a cycle GAN model training, where they were breeding traditional flow plan design with their own generative or generated design, so that the actual AI model is able to create new design, a new flow plan design. So you can see from the left side to the right side that there is actually these AI generated floor plan designs that are actually logical if we want to focus about them. Then the students also engage in a process of post-rationalization, and how at each level they can actually now test the trained AI model to give us the floor plan at that particular level. And you can see here they also engage in system articulation, which means that the multiple architecture systems that are designed by the AI models were integrated and articulated more carefully. Now, yeah, and these are certain flow plan designs generated from the trained models. Now, in our discussion at conclusions here, we identified that this particular work contributes to facilitate this augmented and this creative design thinking through an iterative process. So we believe in a complex workflow and the need for complexity and this interconnected workflow. So we also define a human machine agency here by offering and identify it by offering degrees of agency that a human designer can actually have over the process. And for us, the design space is ever expanding and ever contracting of possibilities. So for example, when the students were running parallel and branching experiments, they were expanding that design space. Using AI models to expand the design space is also an objective for us, because then we're increasing the possibilities of creative solutions. And for future work, we also want to investigate developing the workflow where machine agency is augmented for creativity, and developing a network-like workflow, which is a more complex workflow structure that we are aiming to develop. And then we also want to develop the method further for addressing multiple scales of design simultaneously, which is something we will be investigating. This is our bibliography, and thank you so much.